Hi everybody, it's Winde here, Premier in the Western Cape, and talking about my own COVID experience. It was third time lucky or unlucky, I suppose, because I had been exposed a few times before, but never had any symptoms. And then the third time I picked up some symptoms, and they just felt like I was getting a cold or flu. But of course the rules are you quarantine yourself. But then I thought, listen, with symptoms, I think I should take a test. On the Monday morning, I went for my test. On the Tuesday, I got the results back that I was positive. By the Tuesday already, I could feel that it was more than just a common cold or flu, and I came back as positive. Of course, when that happens to you, and especially for me, because I do have a comorbidity, I'm a diabetic. I've got type 2 diabetes. From my own side, it was a shock. Now, you understand that this thing has now finally happened to you, where before I'd always said, well, let's get it done with, and, so many people are asymptomatic, and I'm sure we'll just cruise through this. I think my big message to everybody is if you can avoid getting it, avoid getting it.
So just how sick did you get? Bearing in mind that you say that with a comorbidity of diabetes, you had to be particularly careful with your health.
I definitely, had the fevers. It sort of immediately becomes pneumonia. Luckily, I didn't have any nasal blockages or sore throats. It just went straight to my chest. The real concern from the doctors was the diabetes. My sugars did go up, and they still now, 3 weeks later, are still not managed properly. It's something I've been managing for 12 years.
Was your diabetes well controlled before you contracted COVID-19?
Yes, I've had it for 12 years. When I first got it, we changed our lifestyle. I lost 18 kilograms in weight. I started riding a bicycle, so I did the exercise, the right food and eating, and that managed it right down to a space where I could even stop the medications.
Did you have to go back onto insulin?
Yes, and I'm using some long-term insulin that we will be trying now for the next few weeks, as well as glucophage, and definitely making sure the diet is right. We're going to try to manage this down so that I can come off the insulin again. Your diabetes becomes more and more difficult to manage as you get older. The earlier you get to manage it, the better. I mean, diabetes itself is a big discussion we have to have in South Africa.
Now, as a Premier, you had access to all the right information about COVID-19. You had great support systems. I'm wondering, though, despite that, whether there was a very human anxiety and at what point that kicked in for you. Was it when you got pneumonia? Was it on diagnosis? Or did you manage sort of mentally to cope quite well?
I think personally I managed that quite well. I didn't really get into that kind of nervous state, but I must say that I could see it in Tracy, and I could see it in Lauren and Jason, my children, and my family members, the number of calls. I could also see it in my own office, people's concern, and the people around you, whether you can physically see them or not, but at least to make contact, at least that phone call, that how are you doing? And I suppose that helped me as well. I think to a certain extent, you understand that you're at risk.
Did you self-isolate from your whole family, your wife and your children? Were you separate from them, or did you realize it was probably too late to do that, so it was pointless?
The three of us, my son, luckily he wasn't at home. He'd actually gone to Neisner, to our home there. He elected to go and spend some time there in isolation himself. I'd had the symptoms on the weekend, and we were all together. So my daughter didn't go back to school hostel. She's in matric at the moment. She stayed at home. And because we'd been together, the three of us, and only the three of us, which was lucky, we just stayed, the three of us together. And I was the only one whose symptoms developed, and the two, wife and daughter, both asymptomatic.
Perhaps someone who's watching this, who is in isolation and not coping, maybe mentally, physically. A lot of people say that the mental mind game is the hardest. What is your message to that person today?
You need to have connections to loved ones. That definitely helps. And then, please, if you are feeling that way, we piloted an app. Once you get tested positive, they automatically do make contact with every positive case. I would say download the app, make that connection, get that phone number, that call center number, and allow them to call you as well. Just talking helps people get through this as well.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story. I appreciate it. Thanks a million. Hey?